Hey everyone, welcome to another G News podcast. Thank you very much for your kind feedback about the recent trip that Vicky organised for my birthday down in Wellington. And it was great to meet many of you down at Backbenches, and we hope to keep connected and keep doing that kind of thing. Well, today it's the 24th of June, and one of the first things we're going to look at is David Boy Seymour, and yesterday he fronted up to a press conference all by himself, and our friend Luke Malpass at The Post said that he passed with flying colours because he didn't mention the ACT Party and he talked pretty much on the ball. However, I'm going to just quickly pick apart some of the things that were said by Seymour and just point out some of the inconsistencies. First of all, the Regulatory Standards Bill. You'd expect that as the Minister of Regulation, he would have a handle on the number of submissions that had been made on the bill, but here's what happened.
Have you been given an update on the number of submissions so far to the Regulatory Standards Bill?
No, I haven't. That would be with the Select Committee.
So David Boy Seymour had no idea it was all with the Select Committee, but in the meantime, Te Pāti Māori and everybody else online were talking about 131,000 submissions that had been made. The only person that didn't seem to know anything about it was David Boy Seymour. So further to that, it had been stated by Labour on a number of occasions now, first in January and now yesterday, that they were going to repeal the Regulatory Standards Bill in their first 100 days in government should they come to power. Here's what David Boy Seymour said when he was put with that probability.
David Seymour, Labor's Duncan Webb has said that Labor will repeal the Regulatory Standards Bill within the first 100 days of them taking office. Discuss.
Well, first of all, it would require the Labor Party to have a majority in Parliament, and after the behaviour I saw from Duncan Webb just last week, I'm not sure that the New Zealand people are going to be up for that.
So yes, apparently according to David Boy Seymour, people vote based on maybe some swearing that are in a select committee that nobody really watches, probably nobody cares about. But David Boy Seymour said that's a very unlikely outcome, that Labor will actually win the next election because of some swearing about how he was full of shit. Anyway, in the next breath, here's what David Boy Seymour said about what we vote for.
Just going back to your comments before about Labor getting back into government, what was your reaction to the Ipsos survey last week that came out that had Labor having overtaken National as the party best placed to handle inflation and cost of living?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, people are voting on the economy right now, and it is tough for people. However, they'll also be voting on the economy next year, and I believe that the policies our government has put in place, carefully managing our own spending, getting rid of red tape and regulation, are leading to an economic recovery. I hear it and I feel it out on the ground when I talk to people. Just yesterday I was talking to a guy who works for a locksmith company.
So apparently we don't vote on swearing, we vote on the economy. And the economy at the moment has David Boy Seymour and National lagging behind the Labor and Left Bloc in a number of polls. What we're seeing at the moment is that David Boy Seymour is speculating about the future. A year ago, David Boy Seymour was saying that by now everything would have come right, and that people were telling him, anecdotally of course, some imaginary person that he met was saying everything was good and there are signs, green shoots. But look at today. Clearly, David Boy Seymour cannot actually see the future and has no idea what will happen in the election. But at the moment, the National Party are behind mid-term in their first term, and that's actually not a good sign for National. David Boy Seymour should know this, but he's clinging to some desperate hope about the economy.
Bad everywhere, and I believe that as that recovery happens, people will keep voting on the economy, and that will be very good for the government that's made done a lot of hard work to turn this economy around after the hospital pass we copped and the breadbasket from Labor.
What do you put it down to at the moment to them? Because if you think about the sort of the rhetoric and the sort of economic growth ad nauseum and the sort of constant chatter and narrative from particularly Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis around getting the country back on track and economic growth and bringing inflation down, why hasn't that translated, and why are voters saying, well, actually, we're hearing all of that, but we think Labor would do a better job?
I think people are driven by their everyday experience, and I accept and I agree. People are having a tough time in a lot of households and a lot of businesses I visit. But two things about that. One is the policies that we're putting in place, I believe, are turning that around. You've seen all of that inflation get digested. Now the interest rates are coming down. People have got more cash in their pocket as their mortgage rates come off. That means businesses can afford to hire more people. And as that happens, you start to meet more people like the locksmith I mentioned yesterday.
We also see Davey Boy Seymour kind of saying that the government had killed inflation when it was actually the independent monetary policy of the Reserve Bank that did that work. And as you know, inflation was declining all the way through 2023 before Luxon's government and Davey Boy Seymour got into power. So it's a bit of a false credit grab there, another steal of credit by Davey Boy Seymour as he tries to get away with things in a pretty weak media environment that doesn't really hold him to account for his contradictory arguments.
That survey was taken in the days after the budget, so what does that say about what people think the budget's cost of living policies can do for them?
Well, first of all, a lot of the budget's policies come into effect on the 1st of July. So if we believe that people are driven by their experience, sentiment on the ground, then I wouldn't expect the mere announcement of something to make that difference.
As you all know, this morning, Christopher Hipkins made a clear statement that we have not seen any evidence at all from the United States that there was a clear imminent threat of an attack from Iran that would justify bombing a sovereign nation like them over their nuclear plants. So unless you actually have that evidence, then this is illegal. This is flying in the face of the international law that we all are supposed to adhere to in a rules-based order. Now, Winston Peters, Christopher Luxon and Davey Boy Seymour all know this very, very well. But have they made a stand? No. What they're actually doing is equivocating and sitting on their hands. But they are denying that they're sitting on the fence.
Do you believe that New Zealand is still sitting on the fence on this issue, or have we actually taken a position? And if we have taken a position, which side are we backing?
No, we're not sitting on the fence, nor are we rushing to judgment. I believe the world is not sitting there waiting for New Zealand to give its position.
But at the same time saying that there's no hurry and that they will actually just wait for some certain facts to be proven.
Have said. However, that is different from New Zealand rushing to judgment and forming a position without knowing all of the facts, which at this point we don't have all of the intelligence that other countries may have.
What do you make of the opposition's response to this? The Labour Party have been very against what the US have done. Te Pāti Māori on a similar vein.
Well, speaking of people that don't have all the intelligence, I'd categorise them that way.
But when asked what the certain facts were that he's waiting for to be proven, Davey Boy Seymour was a blank slate.
Yes.
If you say you're wanting to get all the facts together, what information are you waiting for, or what information do you not have currently that you need to be able to make a determination one way or another?
Well, I think first of all we need to verify some of the claims that have been made on both sides, and we also need to understand the effectiveness and the implications of what's occurred.
He tried to fob us all off that we shouldn't actually know what facts we don't know.
So,
what are some of these claims that you're talking about?
well, again, I'm not going to start speculating which claims we should or shouldn't believe.
That's your argument to say why you're keeping your counsel, as you say, is because there are claims that are yet to be verified. So what generally are you referring to there?
Well, I think it would be easy to start talking about which things we should or shouldn't believe or which things we need to know. I actually don't think that's helpful.
At the moment, our position is that there's no hurry to have a position, and New Zealand values can go to hell because we're just going to wait for these facts that we cannot talk about. We don't know what the facts we're actually waiting for are, and stuff off because he's not going to tell you. Now, this is the same guy that reckons that transparency and openness is really important, but right here, yesterday, right in front of Atlas Luke, here was Davey Boy Seymour running into a dead end, not able to explain himself. His arguments didn't stack up. It was all pretty contradictory. where was this principled position? The United Nations Security Council hadn't given the United States a mandate. There is no evidence at the moment that an imminent attack was proven to be likely. So, right now, we should be making statements, but instead we've got Christopher Luxon worrying about whether he's going to have a speed date, an opportunity for some photographs, which may actually improve some votes back home with Mr. Trump.
Question: do you think the opposition's comments about this potentially breaching international law undermines New Zealand's position on the world stage?
Well, I would give them the same advice that our government is taking, and that is to be aware of the facts, to think carefully about a difficult, some would say unprecedented situation, and get to a good conclusion in good time.
Our media is increasingly becoming desperate. They're looking around. They found some article in Japan that said, well, maybe, Trump's looking at his diary and he might be seeking a meeting with the IP4. And Luxon's been holding in desperately for that dance card. He doesn't have a position. I mean, he's probably privately saying, look, we back this kind of illegal thing you're doing, but we just won't say anything. We won't add to the pile. Apparently, Australia has come out and said, well, we actually support the United States. But what intelligence they may have to actually prove that there was an imminent attack from Iran about to happen hasn't been made public. And so basically it all looks very, very flaky. And it does look like we're just sitting on the fence. Then the topic yesterday moved to the way that Davey Seymour has been running down our expert, not being appropriate in his level of commentary, saying that expert people in the public were deranged, had a derangement syndrome. Davey Boy Seymour has decided that anyone who argues with his position on the precious libertarian regulatory standards bill is suffering from some kind of a delusionary syndrome, and that he's mocking the public and treating experts as if they're all deranged and have a syndrome, and that we don't understand his criticism. Here he is yesterday doubling down on this inappropriate approach for a deputy prime minister. I mean, what a shocker.
And can I just ask you about this letter that Tory Whanau has said that she has sent to the Prime Minister, having a bit of a crack at the fact of what she says is, quote, unacceptable behaviour around you targeting people that oppose the regulatory standards bill. She says that it breaches the cabinet manual. Just curious about what your response to that is.
So sorry, Tory Whanau is accusing me of inappropriate behaviour.
Yeah,
I've heard it all.
Yeah.
There's no such breach. If people want to go out and make completely incorrect statements, then I'm going to get a bit playful and have some fun with them.
It's just being playful and having a bit of fun with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just back on
I could say other things about them. I could say that their incorrect statements are deliberate and therefore they're lying. I could say they're incapable of understanding what they're saying. I'm not saying that. I'm being a bit playful, saying the only reason I can think of for all these totally factually incorrect statements about the Regulatory Standards Bill is that there's some sort of sinister syndrome out there.
So there he was, trying to make out that it's okay to mock people just because they disagree with him in public.
So do you stand by your social media team, their comments around Dr. Laking, that he is deranged, the comments that he is making, and that his
because there's been no such comment made. The comment that has been made is that there's some sort of curious syndrome that is causing people to say untrue things. That is
derangement.
Yes, there's a syndrome, but that doesn't mean that the person's deranged.
So you stand by that comment?
Yes, but not the way you understand it.
And obviously, this is the kind of stuff that Davey Boy Seymour doesn't think people vote about, but he does think that they vote about swearing. And then he goes and says, well, they don't vote on anything but the economy. The economy is down, so ACT and National are lagging in the polls, even though they said last year that everything would be right by now with the cost of living. And Labour have overtaken them in the latest Ipsos polls as being most likely thought of as being best at handling a cost of living crisis. someone that will actually care, someone with some empathy, someone who isn't just trying to cut things and shuffle the deck chairs around in a neoliberal reshuffling as the economy grows by some piddling amount that it always will as the population slowly increases and inflation drives up the costs of everything. So they claim a big success from very little, and they're in trouble. So what else was Davey Boy Seymour saying yesterday?
Deputy Prime Minister,
yes, sorry.
the Kids Can report, it says there's been a 15% increase in demand for food in schools. Is the government doing enough to help tamariki?
Well, there's no question that we face incredibly tough economic times.
Davey Boy Seymour was faced with the fact that Kids Can has reported that there's a whole bunch more people, 15% more kids going hungry, and that things are getting worse.
And that is showing up with demand for food banks and food in schools. However, I also just point out that we have got on top of inflation. We are getting on top of rent, which is one of the major drivers of costs in poorer households. We are relentless in managing our own finances so that there's more to go around. So yes, it is a difficult time. I fear that these global events may add further pressure. If you see the price of petrol going up, that puts pressure on households. However, I think we can point to a large number of initiatives the government's taking in order to ease that burden, which, by the way, the cost of living is now in its 4th year as an issue. It was the end of 2022 that we first started talking about a cost of living crisis. It is still going, but I believe the government can point to significant progress, killing inflation, getting rents to stop going up and even down in some places, giving tax relief and managing our own spending.
So David Boy said that the cost of living is not new, it's been around for a while, but of course it isn't getting any better, and he's trying to claim that rents are stable, but really that's actually because of the Reserve Bank bringing things down. What about rates? Have rates been stable? What about the price of electricity? What about the price of butter? So David Boy Seymour is very selective in the way that he looks at things, and he tries to get away with all of this. Yesterday we were quite pleased to hear Benedict Collins raise the point that over at the Atlas Network think tank, the Adam Smith Institute, Davey Boy Seymour had said that people who had health problems, who were addicted to smoking, tobacco, and who died in horrible deaths sometimes, were actually fiscal heroes, and he was quite upbeat about all of this. And he doubled down that that was a fact, which just showed that he was a heart who actually had no empathy at all for the way that people get addicted to things and struggle to save their own lives but can't because they've been mind captured by the addiction involved in nicotine smoking.
Your comments about smokers up in the UK, were they in poor taste?
No, because they're true. And the fact is, if you smoke cigarettes, you pay a lot of tax and you get less superannuation. People now believe that we should be guided by taste rather than truth. We're not going to have much good debate in this world.
But a lot of New Zealanders, they have pretty grisly deaths from smoking-related diseases, and here you've got the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand calling them fiscal heroes.
Well, one of the consequences of people smoking is that they leave more money in the government's coffers. Now, it's a pretty grisly choice, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have people who are prepared to put the facts out there. If I'm seriously being castigated for sharing the facts, then I think the people castigating me can't be that serious about the issue.
So Davey Boy Seymour seemed callous and the kind of person that very few people can actually warm to, but the cold, unempathetic person clearly didn't see anything wrong with his own callousness. And this is kind of sociopathic. There is no admission to any kind of wrongdoing, and that's what we saw here. Well, that's probably enough for one day. We've got Parliament on today, so I've actually got to go and have a look at question time and see how our amazing left-wing opposition are holding these right-wing neoliberals to account in the House of Parliament. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again for all your support in the last few days, and it's been a really good time. Thank you to Vicky, my wife, for actually kidnapping me and giving me a great 60th birthday. Really enjoyed myself in the last few days, and it's been awesome meeting some of you, and I hope to meet many more of you over the coming months. Have a great day and catch you all again soon.